start this part of the activity with the presentation of the Israeli documentalist. He did prescribe grass, a documentary showing the benefits of medicinal cannabis. He's currently finishing the scientist on the mythical Dr. Raphael Mechoulam. So we hereby present cannabis being used in a nursing home.
I want to share with you my first encounter with cannabis as medicine, and that was 15 years ago when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer and had to go on chemotherapy and radiation. Her oncologist whispered in her ear that she should try to get hashish or cannabis to alleviate the side effect of the treatment. So she came back home and asked me about it. What do you know about cannabis? About hashish. At that time, the only thing I knew was from my experience in Dutch coffee shops. Little experience, I must say. So she had a really serious question. What about the brain damage? It was known back then that cannabis can cause brain damage. That was the common knowledge. And I really didn't have any answer to that. Luckily, at that year, Professor Raphael Mechoulam, who is also known as the father of cannabinoids research, appeared in the media as he won the Israel Prize, the highest prize for science in Israel. So he appeared in the media. And then I went to listen to one of his lectures. And it was a 1-hour lecture, a mind-blowing lecture, actually, because what he said was completely different from everything I knew and everyone around me knew about cannabis and its effect. I went after the lecture to Professor Mechoulam and asked him the question that my mother asked me. Will it cause brain damage to my mother? So he looked at me and said, well, you didn't listen to my lecture. Because in the lecture, he actually explained that cannabinoids, or THC, or endocannabinoids, are protective, neuroprotective. So actually, it's the opposite from brain damage. Anyway, I came back home with the new knowledge and information, and my mother tried cannabis. The story of how I got cannabis at that time, it's not for now, but she tried the cannabis, and it helped her a lot. I was amazed, and it stayed with me for a long time. I started researching and reading about it, and then decided to make a documentary about it that was prescribed grass. Professor Mechoulam started his research in 1964 with a bag of hashish that was smuggled from Lebanon and was caught in Israel by the police. And the police gave Professor Mechoulam the hashish for his research, so he started working on the hashish. Just 1964, Gaoni and Mechoulam isolate the active ingredient in cannabis, in hashish, the THC, and later Mechoulam continued to research the biophysiological mechanisms and how THC and other cannabinoids work on our body. Two major cannabinoids, we already heard about them. CBD was isolated by Mechoulam and Chvo in 1963, and THC a year later by Gaoni and Mechoulam. Today we know that there are more than 100 different cannabinoids. And this clip tells about a research that was done 34 years ago with cannabidiol, CBD. So let's try and play this video.
We knew that cannabis had been used for epilepsy.
In the past?
In the past, there is, for example, a translation of Arab story of the 15th century, and it says that one of the Arab leaders had epilepsy. Physician came over and gave him cannabis, and it cured him, but he had to take it for his entire life. So the field kind of told us, try it on epilepsy. We first tried it in animals and it worked. So at this point, we decided to go into humans. trial took place in Sao Paulo. They had about 10 people that had epilepsy that could not be affected by the known drugs. We started giving them high doses of cannabidiol, 200 milligrams per day.
And you were producing the cannabidiol from hashish?
For almost 40 years, we didn't produce it. We isolated it. We separated it from hashish. Hashish contains about 4%, 5% cannabidiol. So it is really quite difficult to isolate, to obtain large amounts, but we did that. We were happy to note that indeed they had no seizures while they were taking cannabidiol. And it was published, and nothing happened afterwards. So far, 34 years later, this is the only publication of cannabidiol in humans against epilepsy.
So just a short list of what CBD can do and on what it can work, starting from Alzheimer's, inflammation, diabetes, and of course sleep or wakefulness. And this is done in many, this was proven in many researches. Later on in 1988, cannabinoid receptor, specific cannabinoid receptor was found in the brain, and another receptor was found in the immune system. So the situation was that we have a specific receptor for THC, and this is a bit, it brings a question because receptors in our body are made for compounds that we produce, not because there is a plant out there that produces compounds. So Mechoulam continued his research to find endogenous cannabinoids, cannabinoids that we produce.
In my lab, there were 3 collaborators who contributed a lot in this research.
My name exactly is Lumír Ondřej Hanuš. I went for socialism in Czechoslovakia. Professor Mechoulam invited me. I'm here already 23 years.
23?
I came just for 1 year and it's a little bit extended. 1 year, it was not enough for research. We already had here postdoc Bill Devane, Dr. Bill Devane.
In the States, I go by Bill. In Ireland, I go by Will.
Okay, run over.
He used to come late in the afternoon and then work throughout the night. And Aviva Breuer, she worked with me in the lab for about 30 years. She still works with me in the lab. She used to come early in the morning. So sometimes they would meet here. If it was 5 o'clock in the morning, she would come in and he was just about to leave.
In 3.5 years, we never had a lab meeting.
Looking for the endogenous cannabinoid, a lot of brains were involved, not only brains of the researchers.
Well, we initially worked on brains of pigs. It is generally accepted that the organs of pigs and the organs of humans are somewhat closely related. And probably pigs and humans are also somehow closely related. Well, I'm not sure that the pigs will be very happy to be related to humans, but that's something else. So we wanted to work on pig brains. And the pig brains are not so easy to get in Jerusalem.
It's not kosher.
I took my car, Bill and I went to Tel Aviv, bought a few kilos of pig brain. The butcher thought that we are having a party. We were going to do something with it, cook the brain.
Each time when we came to buy it again, so price was higher. At the end, it was very expensive.
I got the brain and just made some fractions and put it over a sand column and separated a few fractions and tested them for how they bound to the receptor. And I thought, oh, it won't take long, you know.
I came just for 1 year. But after 1 year, with Bill, still we didn't have pure compound. So we asked Professor Mechoulam to extend. Shalom.
A few other labs were already looking for compounds.
He thought we might be scooped by some other lab.
But we told him, just try it with us. We are very close.
And after about 2 years, we found in extremely low amounts.
It was only like a few droplets in the end of a little test tube.
A compound in the brain which acts on these receptors.
And of course, as with every important discovery, no single lab usually has all the expertise. So Rafi was such a well-known figure in the field that he was able to put together a team of outstanding colleagues, including Roger Pertwee.
I'm professor of neuropharmacology at the University of Aberdeen.
Considered one of the top experts in cannabinoid receptor research.
But they then needed to see whether it behaved like we expect a cannabinoid to behave. So we just developed a new assay for doing that. So they sent me some anandamide, and we were able to show in our laboratory that it did behave like we would expect a cannabinoid receptor agonist to behave. We've had other collaborations since then, but that was very much the most exciting one.
We hadn't figured out the name of it yet, though.
The chemical name is arachidonoyl ethanolamine. We could have left it at that. We thought that maybe it has to do with mood, emotions, things of that sort, and therefore we thought, well, if it causes some kind of changes in emotion, maybe it causes happiness.
If you smoke marijuana, it gives you a certain bliss. So the natural compound also is responsible for that same type of a bliss, an internal bliss that you have, you know.
We looked for a good name, and although some people do not agree with me, but in Hebrew there are not too many names for happiness. For sorrow you can find a lot of names, but for happiness, not for extreme happiness. We've looked into Assyrian things, but the Assyrian things are more complicated. They call cannabis, with apparently a lot of THC, they call it ganzigunu. Well, call the compound ganzigunu was too complicated. So we decided we'll go to something else.
I remember actually discussing the naming of this. I think it was Bill Devane who came up with the name. Is that right?
Right.
Raphael Mechoulam and Roger Pertwee and myself were all sitting outside in the sun, overlooking a nice little river. And 2 years before, I said to Rafi, if I isolate this chemical, I get to name it, don't I?
Bill was interested in these Sanskrit stories, and he found that Ananda is bliss, delight.
People who know me know that I study Eastern philosophy, and I know lots of Sanskrit words, you know.
Ananda means in Sanskrit supreme joy.
Professor Mechoulam said, you know, it can be a good, it will be a part just on chemical nature of this compound, and because it's ethanol amide. So we did Ananda and amide, so it's anandamide.
They made this discovery and published in this landmark paper, and its importance is illustrated very well by the fact that it's one of the very few papers in the biomedical literature that has been cited over 2,000 times since its publication.
They even don't cite it anymore because it's considered such a well-known thing, an obvious thing, that they don't even cite our work anymore. They mention anandamide does A and B and C. It turned out that there is a whole system in the body which is involved around anandamide, and this in many respects parallels important systems that the body relies upon them. And this system is called now the endocannabinoid system, and a huge number of researchers are involved in investigating this system from many aspects.
I'm a full professor of biochemistry.
The basis of my work was to understand how the nervous system works.
I usually go by Dr. Mary Abu.
The CB2 receptor is we're trying to discover how the world works, or in our case, how cannabinoids work and how the brain works.
Are there additional receptors? We know CB1, CB2 are receptors.
Again, you see a difference between the oral administration versus the smoked form, which is a very similar.
In this model, we found that activation of CB2 was effective. A compound which we haven't managed to isolate yet, but we strongly believe exists.
The endocannabinoid system is complex, it's very challenging.
If the animal, during the timeout period, is still pressing the lever, is because he has lost the control.
It's just perhaps not easy to describe, actually, how...
Continuing the anandamide, the first endocannabinoid, and it's a very nice name, I must say, happiness or bliss, to call this compound. And later on, a second cannabinoid was found, and Mechoulam, when he was so certain about the safety of using cannabinoids, of using THC, that he went on trying these compounds on children.
As scientists, indeed as intellectuals, we should try always to be skeptical.
So in 1995, you had an idea of testing THC on children.
It has been known for many years that cannabis can lower the effects of anti-cancer drugs. Anti-cancer drugs, many of them, cause terrible side effects. And in children, unfortunately, children get cancer as well. Children vomit and want to vomit, have nausea. They're really in a bad shape. And they cry all the time, and their parents are in a bad shape. Luckily, most of the children can be cured of the cancer, but the treatment is absolutely difficult. We wanted to do a clinical trial in children. We did that with Professor Aya Avramov. She was head of the Department of Pediatric Oncology in one of the Jerusalem hospitals. And we did a major study with THC given in oily drops under the tongue of children. Obviously, children cannot smoke. We had children that were not even 1 year old. She dropped THC in olive oil under the tongue 2 or 3 times a day, small doses, during the anti-cancer treatment. At the beginning, we wanted to do a double-blind study. Some of the children got the THC, some other children got only the olive oil. After a week, she told me, I'm not going ahead with that. I know exactly who is getting the THC. I know exactly who is not getting it. There was a complete separation. Those that didn't get it continued to vomit. So she went ahead doing an open study, and she gave THC, pure THC, under the tongue about 400 times, which means that those that were involved in the experiment got it every time they were treated with whatever they were being treated. And at the end, we saw that we had complete block of vomiting, complete block of nausea by small amount of THC, which did not cause any psychoactivity, nothing. So here we had a complete therapeutic effect. And we published that, and again, essentially nothing happened. Finito, that was it. It's still not being used in children.
And you think it's a good idea to use it for children?
Well, I believe it's an excellent idea because we help those children that suffer. But I have no influence on oncologists.
So actually it's kind of repeating itself, that his research is finding something amazing and then nothing happens. I'm going to the next subject is cannabis for medicinal use in Israel, but I will go quickly on that. For me, it started in 2007, although it was already approved in 1997, but it was kept as a secret. As I told you, it was the year 2000 when I wanted to help my mother. I didn't know there is an option to get a license. Nobody knew. During those first 10 years, only 10 people got a license, and the Ministry of Health kept it as a secret. In 2007, a family decided to take upon themselves the growing and dispensing of cannabis for patients, and they did it for free. I joined as a volunteer, and I got a special license to, it's in Hebrew, so you have to believe me for the translation, but the license was for rolling a dangerous drug. Okay, this is the license that I had, and so I could officially roll a dangerous drug, and that was the first license. Now, if you have any problem with rolling a joint, you can ask me later how to do it officially by the state of Israel. I can give you answers for that. And we started with a small clinic in a small house, actually someone's living room, became a small clinic where we could educate the patients. So later on, I instructed more educators to help us when we started to grow little by little. And sometimes patients needed help because they could not use the cannabis by themselves. At that time, we had only the options of rolling joints or maybe using a bong. We didn't have any edibles or any vaporizers in Israel. So that was the only thing we did. As I mentioned, a bong. But for older people, it was much easier to try this kind of water pipe that is not connected to smoking. This is completely different for them, and it was very helpful. I will skip that clip because I think we don't have much time, but in the movie, there were participating a lot of patients that agreed to open their story, and I want to show just one of them, David, who suffered from Parkinson's disease, and he received the license for cannabis to alleviate the pain that is related to this disease, but he found out that cannabis can do much more than that for him. So let's play the clip.
אני אובחנתי כחולה פרקינסון לפני כ8 שנים. וחולה פרקינסון, המשמעות שלו זה רעידות, שמלוות בכאבים.
מה עוד לכתוב?
בוא תחתום, בוא נראה את החתימה שלך.
מה עוד? אתה רוצה... זהו. זהו. כבר תסתכל. משוחררת, הכל טוב. מה אתה צריך? מה לכתוב אותה?
So actually that was Hebrew, but you can see the difference in the handwriting, shaky handwriting, and then really clear and nice. What happened after that scene was broadcast in the movie, that neurologists decided to do research about Parkinson's and cannabis. And they did this research in what they found out is this amelioration of both motor and non-motor symptoms in patients with Parkinson's disease treated with cannabis. Very simple. Nothing happened afterwards, don't worry. Nobody is doing anything with it. So another result of the documentary was that one day I get a strange phone call. Hello, my name is Inbal, and I'm the head nurse of Hadarim Nursing Home. One of the patients got license for cannabis, and I want you to come and help us. We don't know what to do with it. Okay, I said, why me? She said, I got your phone because you made that documentary. You probably know something about cannabis. So I went to the kibbutz. It was to this nursing home. Hadarim Nursing Home is a 36 skilled nursing facility with 36 patients, and they all have difficulties with activities of daily living. Inbal, the nurse, took me to see this patient. She was total dementia, sitting on the wheelchair, groaning, not responding to anything, not communicating, arised, running around. And actually, she was named by the nursing team, not without affection, the tiger. And what we had is joints. It was impossible to give this lady a joint. She was not responding and growing, a tiger. So I asked the nurse if I can do something else. And she said, of course, do whatever you want. This lady was kicked out of any other nursing facilities, and she's here for the last 3 months, and this is just terrible, so do whatever you can. So I actually took a bong, I took a deep heat from that bong, and just blew the smoke an inch from her mouth. And it actually did the trick. Oops. Rapid response. Just a few minutes after she inhaled, her eyes stopped running around. She became quiet. She even responded when I called her name. And then for the first time, since she was admitted at the nursing home, she smiled and even laughed. And the nurse almost fainted. And okay, she told me, okay, you stay here. You don't go anywhere. I have 36 patients. And of course, I couldn't do the same trick again and again. So a friend built an improvised smoke machine, which was a kind of combination between a vaporizer and a bong. And a TV report actually showed how it worked. Let's play the clip.
בבקשה, רום. תכף אני מחליף לך בלון.
רום, בן ה-90, מקבל עדי קנאביס רפואי באמצעות מכשיר המותאם במיוחד לצרכיו. גופו מגיב מיד. רעידות מחלת הפרקינסון הולכות ונפסקות.
one point, somebody decided that it is worthwhile testing cannabis with relatively high doses of THC, I believe, in people that are Alzheimer or Alzheimer-like patients. They got it in their food, in the yogurt or whatever. Some of them, I believe, not all of them, but some of them were in a better shape. Some of them started speaking, their eyes became brighter. In one case, an ex-writer started writing again. In another case, a woman said, "I feel fine," and went home. So it seems to be helping the symptoms of Alzheimer or senility. Alzheimer at the moment is a huge, huge problem, and there is very little that can be done for Alzheimer patients. So maybe if it is well researched in the future, we should know how to help these patients. We're dealing here with a population of millions, and this population will grow because in most countries, Western countries at least, the number of older people is growing all the time. We are lucky that cannabis is not toxic. People do not die from overdose of cannabis.
I did my degree in environmental school in Tel Aviv University, and decreasing the use of medication is actually really, really important to the environment, because recently scientists all over the world are finding that a residue of pharmaceutical that are coming mostly from human consumption in our water resources. The treating plant, the treating sewage treating plant that's supposed to filter the water is not designed to filter these molecules of pharmaceuticals. So the pharmaceuticals are getting to our water resources. Decreasing the use of medication with cannabis is also good for our environment in that sense. This is the title of my research, Decreasing the Consumption of Conventional Drugs Together with Significant Health Improvement Through Medical Cannabis Treatment. And I'll jump because we talked about it a little bit, and this is what cannabis was prescribed for, different situations, different ailments. Most of the patients were prescribed for pain, then appetite, spasticity, agitation, Parkinson's, insomnia, mood, and ataxia. And as you can see, there is more than 27 different situations here, because some of the patients got it for more than one debilitating situation. We use 4 different types of cannabis in Hadarim nursing home: a high THC strain without any CBD, a low THC strain without any CBD, and then a kind of a balanced strain with 12% CBD and THC, and then a high CBD strain with very low THC. And this was given to different ailments for different situations. And of course, we used smoking. Most of the patients finally used cannabis in ingesting, actually, with the porridge, the easiest way, of course. Just back to the first case, because I want to show you what happened with her weight loss. She lost a few kilos before we started because she wasn't eating, actually, because she was agitated and shouting, and she didn't want anyone to push her food. But as we started, you can see the halt in the reduction of her weight, and then the next year she started to gain some weight, which is usually not the case for this kind of situations. And these are the medications that were discontinued throughout her treatment. Antipsychotics, anxiolytics, sedative, and one for Alzheimer's. And the side effects of this kind of all these medications is absolutely terrible. Actually, the first one, Seroquel, as antipsychotic, as an FDA warning, do not give it to dementia patients because it can kill them. But it's used everywhere, all over the world in nursing home for dementia. Maybe that's what they want to do with these patients. But this is FDA red warning on the package of Seroquel. Just another case that I will not. Results for the 27 patients, health results. It was, of course, pain relief, improvement of appetite, improved eating ability, decreased in muscle contraction, improved sleep, decreased use of sleeping pills, of course, and enema treatment that was routine part of this place, like any other places, was completely stopped. Just a quick example of spasticity. This lady, before the treatment, totally spastic. The problem is not that she's totally spastic, but think of how to treat her, how to wash. Sometimes the bones are broken because of this situation. Nothing helps. But a few minutes after she inhaled cannabis, this is the situation. Her hands are free. Look at the neck. Look at the situation of the head. So the improvement for the patient symptom, this table can be really confusing because, as you see, 9 patients got cannabis for appetite. But when we look at the files of the other patient, I saw that 15 patients actually got better appetite. And they didn't get the cannabis for the appetite, of course. Sleeping, 6 patients slept better. Only 1 got it for sleeping. This is what I call the positive side effects of cannabis. Now, for PTSD, of course, no one got the license for PTSD. But at that place, we had 2 Holocaust survivors. And both of them suffered from severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And for the first time, maybe in their life, or at least since admitted at this place, they stopped the dreams, the nightmares, the daytime anxiety. They became relaxed. Again, inflammation, you see 0 at the prescribed, but 2 at the result. So 2 of the patients that suffered from inflammation, gout, stopped. There were no more inflammations. And these are the 39 families of medication: is anticonvulsants, Alzheimer's, sedative, antipsychotic, gout, antidiabetic, anxiolytic, pain, Parkinson's, and laxative. Sorry for saying it so fast, and these are the 25 different medications that were stopped. And I thought that a better way to put it would be actually like that. Much more visual. So, as I mentioned, the influence also on the environment is really important. And if I have time now, I will skip that and just another case report, because again, it happened after the movie was screened, and a father of a young boy called me and asked for my help. And of course, I helped, and the 11-year-old boy suffered from autism, of course, agitation, shouting, scratching and wounding himself, scratching and wounding everyone around him. Actually, his father and mother are all wounded, and they don't tell at work what he told me. What he tells, he said, I was walking in the garden with the roses and got some, because they didn't want to tell anyone. And he was always scared, no sleep at all. And the parents actually told me that they are living in it's a living nightmare. And we managed to get the license. Children don't get licenses for cannabis. Autism, never. And with the help of Professor Mechoulam, we got the license and started treatment. And we treated the young boy with THC oil. It's cannabis extract, but mostly THC. And we started with 1 drop 3 times a day for the first 2 days in order to see that there are no bad reaction to the cannabis, but there was no reaction at all. And we went up to 2 drops 3 times a day. It was 5 milligrams of THC. And on the 5th day, when we raised the amount to 7.5 milligrams 3 times a day, we saw a little reduction in symptoms. The 4th week of treatment brought with him amazing things. No agitation, no shouting and crying. His skin was clean because he stopped wounding himself and started communicating a little bit and smiling. It started to be a different child. And it started to sleep at night, so his parents could sleep at night. And the first 3 months were different titration and trying to learn the dosage. And sometimes there were problems with the supplier. Not always we had the same oil to use. But after 3 months of treatment, the boy that was, before that he was 1 year at home, not going to any kind of school. Now he was not agitated, no shouting and crying. Clean skin, as we mentioned, this kept on going on, sleep the whole night. He created eye contact, not very common for autism. He became more verbal. But more than that, he got back to school after 3 months of treatment. Before that, he didn't go to school for a year, a special school, of course. So this is where I say thank you. Thank you.